Reports of flying saucers are nothing new. From the beginning of recorded time, men have been seeing unexplainable things in the sky, and there's no reason to doubt they saw something. The question is, was what they saw really there? And what was it they really saw?
There's nothing to hide. There's nothing to hide at all.
Welcome to Somewhere in the Skies Live. I am your host, Ryan Sprague, and we have a very special show for you guys tonight. We're actually simulcasting on another YouTube channel right now, and that is the brand new Somewhere on the Screen podcast. For those of you who don't know, I have taken the keys from my good friends, Nick Westemeyer and Chris Moss, filmmakers in New York City, and I am now in charge of driving Somewhere on the Screen off a cliff. It is a movie review and analysis podcast. We're streaming over there tonight. What better way to start and kick things off over there than of a review of Disclosure Day with our crossover special guests for tonight from the Sound, Light, and Frequency podcast from Need to Know. You know them. You love them. They are our Hollywood insiders and our UFO enthusiast friends, to say the least. So tonight we will be breaking down a very spoiler-heavy review of Steven Spielberg's Disclosure Day. Have you guys seen it yet? I would hope so, or don't watch this yet. I'm warning you right now, we're going to be giving away everything tonight. We're going to break it down as a UFO movie. We're going to break it down as a Hollywood movie, as a Spielberg movie, and everything in between. And both of these gentlemen joining us tonight have worked with Steven Spielberg in one capacity or another. So I'm really, really excited to talk to them a little about that before we start the review. But yeah, this is going to be a lot of fun. Reviews have been very passionate, I will put it that way, for this movie. So yeah, let's not waste any more time. We have the live chat going all night. Super chat's open if you guys want to throw us some support. We'll put your questions, your comments up here, and hopefully we can make you guys a part of this review tonight with our very special guests, Bryce Zabel and Brent Friedman. So without further ado, let's bring them in. Make sure they're unmuted, and here we go. Welcome, gentlemen.
Hey, it's great to be with you. We're both coming to you from Austin, Texas.
Yes.
Yes. Brent, how are you, man?
I'm doing well. It's great to be here. As we talked about before we started the show, it's been a minute since we last talked, and yet it only feels like a minute.
It really does. I think I was in Osaka last time I talked to you guys, which is crazy. We had talked about this movie coming out, and now it's out. And we won't give away too much about where you guys are, why you are where you are, unless you want to talk about that. But Bryce, I know for you, Brent, maybe you too, you had some pretty unique experiences seeing Disclosure Day. Is that something you could share or not?
Of course. Well, I started seeing a screening, I believe, on the same day you saw it, which, although given your time zone, maybe they were different days. But on June 8th, I saw it at a screening, a professional screening in Las Vegas, and my seatmate next to me was George Knapp, which was it doesn't get a lot better than hang out with George Knapp to watch a Spielberg UFO movie. That's high drama. And then Brent and I have come to Austin because we've recorded something with Jesse Michaels on American Alchemy, which is not out yet. So you've got the scoop, my friend. And literally on the night that I got here, I saw Disclosure Day at the local IMAX here in Austin with Jesse by my side, which was because Brent was still flying in. And it was so great because the IMAX screening had a live stream from Steven Spielberg and Emily Blunt, who were, I believe, in New York, but they were speaking live to every IMAX theater in North America. So that was and it was an interview before the screening. So I've seen it twice, but so has Brent.
Brent, what was your experience? Yeah.
Yes. So I didn't have any special screenings or celebrities sitting next to me. I saw it with the general public. I saw it the way probably most of your audience saw it, was just going to a theater. But I did see it twice. I saw it once on Thursday night at a late night screening with some work colleagues. And then, as Bryce mentioned, I flew into Austin on Friday, got here a little too late to join Bryce and Jesse and his producer. So I went and saw it by myself. Well, actually, I saw it in a fairly packed house here in Austin at the Alamo Draft House on a big HDR screen, and it was quite impressive. I mean, it was impressive the first time, but seeing a movie on HDR, I don't know that I'd done that before, and it was pretty amazing.
Cool. Yeah. So, I mean, I was heartbroken. I had the opportunity. I was invited to go see a advanced screening in New York City through, I believe it was through Amblin or the marketing people. And because they thought I still lived there, and I was like gutted. I was like, oh my God, I was ready to fly.
That's what I was going to say. I bet you considered at least briefly, what if I get on a plane?
Yeah.
Where did you see it? Tell us about your screening experience.
Yeah. So I ended up seeing it here in Edinburgh, Scotland, where I live. And it was at a Everyman Theater. Have you guys ever been to one of those in the UK? So it's one of those really fancy ones where like you go in and it's beautiful lobbies and all that. And then you sit down and they take your order and they bring you in like a 5-course meal, bottle of champagne, whatever. You're sitting couches and they introduce the movie. You know, they have an actual human being come in and be like, you are seeing this by this. And so it was a really kind of elevated experience. I wish I had seen the IMAX version first and foremost, but for the experience I did have, it was excellent. I mean,
I'm curious what they serve you for food in Scotland for your classy movie. What'd you eat? What was that?
I had some haggis, Bryce.
Yes.
I had,
there you go.
I had a nice one of these guys, which I'm drinking tonight. It's called a Jarl, Fine Ales Farm Brewery here in Scotland. So yeah, it was a really good experience, and I couldn't ask for more for seeing a Steven Spielberg UFO movie. So yeah.
I'm having a little disclosure day envy because Bryce had celebrities and you had a 5-course meal in a fancy theater. I had HDR, but it just doesn't compare. So
you at least get a hot dog, Brent. I mean, you must have something.
I had chicken tenders with some comeback sauce. There you go.
There you go.
I love it. I'll say this: 5-star haggis is more like a 2-star meal anywhere else. I'll just put it that way. I'll put it that way, guys. Well, okay. So, I mean, the buzz was huge for this thing inside the UFO community and outside as well. I mean, they have done an incredible job of marketing this film in a very ambiguous way. I mean, we had buses, going every 5 minutes up and down Edinburgh with Disclosure Day plastered all over them. The trailers were very kind of mysterious leading up to this. You had Spielberg even being in the trailers himself, talking about this stuff. So before we even get to the movie itself, what did you make of kind of the pre-buzz for this thing when you first heard about it, and then leading up to like the week before it opened?
Well, I think that the one thing that we'll probably all three agree on is that it was kind of unprecedented to have the director in the final trailer. So that's one thing. And I believe that the reason this is such an event culturally right now, Brian, is that two things. First, Spielberg went out and called this movie Disclosure Day. Now, maybe the average human being doesn't actually know exactly what disclosure refers to, but everybody in your audience and our audience knows disclosure has a ufological meaning, as the moment when we finally own up to the fact that we're not alone and that they're not just out there in the universe someplace, but they're here with us. So Spielberg got everybody's appetite wet with that. But the other thing he did, as he did in that last trailer, is and I saw dozens of his interviews, and particularly in the live interview before the IMAX, he kept saying over and over that Close Encounters was his speculative work, but this one was true. And true is a big word, because if you say something is true, you must have reason to say that, which plays into all of the thematic stuff about, well, has Spielberg been given inside knowledge or any of that stuff? And if a guy is going to say it's true, I mean, if I had just read a bunch of stuff, I'd say I believe it to be true. I don't know that I would say it is true, but he has been saying it is true.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And not only that, he said it multiple times. It's not like he had a gaffe, like when Obama said, "Oh, their aliens are real," and then he kind of walked it back. And Spielberg has doubled down on it over and over again through this whole, hype buildup over months. And I got the impression that what was going to happen was he wasn't obviously making a documentary, right? That would be, he already did that with Age of Disclosure. He was involved in that in some capacity, I think. This was a Hollywood movie. So as with Bryce and I, when we made Dark Skies, it was truth under the cover of fiction. So my anticipation was I'm going to see a movie that has some truth in it because Steven Spielberg himself is telling me that's what's in the movie, but it's going to be presented under the cover of fiction. That was my impression going in. That was my expectation the first night that I sat in the theater.
Brent, and I think that expectation was big for a lot of us. That you guys have covered on your show so much of like, what does Spielberg know? Was he given any information to disseminate to the public through the media, through Hollywood? And, you guys bounce those questions around a lot in your conversations over at your podcast. And I think for a lot of us, we're like, okay, we're going to get some nuggets, some Easter eggs in here of the stuff that he wants disclosed to the public. Yeah. Or these things he brought up in interviews. There was one interview I saw him do where he brought up the Pascagoula alien abduction. And I'm like, that's deep. That's not just Betty and Barney Hill. That's not Roswell. That's like a pretty obscure UFO abduction.
It's a deep cut, as they say.
Deep cut. Exactly.
It's too bad he didn't bring up Calvine. That would have brought it all home to you and Scott. That would have been good.
Bryce, you don't worry about that, man. The fact that this movie opened with a wrestling match, that's all I needed to know it was made for me.
In fact, I was going to try to pull off that Brent and I were missing a chance to be at the White House for the UFC fight tonight, and that we canceled to be with you, but that wouldn't be credible. So we're here because we want to be here.
Sometimes you just have to settle, Bryce.
Yes, exactly.
I promise we'll get into the movie, guys. But for some of our audience who may not know this, you both have ostensibly worked with Spielberg at different times. Is that something you could briefly run us through each of your personal experiences before we dive into Disclosure Day? Bryce, I guess we'll start with you.
Well, absolutely. Brent and I each have our own little separate Spielberg connections. Although we did have one at Dark Skies, which we don't need to go into right now. It's a longer story. But I did write a first pass of a video game called Ghost in the Machine that Spielberg wanted written, and had a meeting with him there. But the credit most people remember is that I worked for like 9 months on the Taken miniseries, which had multiple meetings. I think we had 3 meetings with him during that time and talked UFOs for hours, right? So that was certainly very intriguing and certainly a lifetime memory. But the actual memory of my Spielberg connection literally goes to when I was the chairman of the TV Academy in 2002, when he and Tom Hanks were nominated for Band of Brothers. And they came to me and said, "Who do you want to sit with?" And I said, "Do I get to pick?" And they go, "Well, you're the chairman." I said, "What about Spielberg and Hanks?" And they said, "Sure." So I ended up, my wife and I, Jackie and I, ended up sitting with Tom Hanks and Steven Spielberg and their spouses at the Emmys that year when they won for Band of Brothers. That was very special. However, UFOs, I have to say, part of me wanted to say, "Well, Steven, as long as we're here during the commercial breaks, I was just wondering if," but I thought that would be a bridge too far. So we kept it non-UFO at that time. But yeah, so we've had our connections. Brent has had a very specific one himself. I'll turn it over to him.
Well, yes, and I'm going to wrap it around so that, Bryce, you can remember talking about one other one that you had, which is my connection was first I was asked to come in and kind of audition for the show Taken, which I wasn't able to do because I had a deal at Sony.
Stole the job from you, right?
Yes. And so, but then years later, in I think 2006, I was working at Electronic Arts, which is a big game company. They have a studio in LA, and I was working on a team that, ironically, his oldest son, Max, was part of our development team. And then, lo and behold, I learned a few months later that Steven himself had a development deal at Electronic Arts, and he was developing a game with the code name LMNO. And that game was one which, the way the studio worked, they moved teams occasionally to come and sit in on other projects and give objective feedback. So several times I came in and worked with Steven on his LMNO game, offering objective insights and feedback. And it was quite wonderful to brainstorm with him several times. But here's the interesting thing. I'm just going to put this out there. You know what the plot of the game was? It was about a young woman who is human but has alien gifts that allow her to read people's minds and do the whole hand wavy, these are not the droids you're looking for, and basically use the power of empathy through telepathy to navigate through the world. And why does she need to navigate? Because a bunch of government goons are chasing her, trying to capture her because she's a unique specimen on Earth.
Oh, come on.
This was 20 years ago. And this was clearly an idea, a character, a storyline that he was already very interested in. Now, the game never got made. It was very hard to it's a cool concept, very hard to translate that into game mechanics. Like, what do I do? How do I make this happen on the stick? So it never got out of the development phase, but it actually connects back in several ways now to Bryce, the other Steven Spielberg.
If you think about it, by the way, Taken ends with Dakota Fanning being a hybrid who has enhanced mental capability. So that, of course, is what is going on in Disclosure Day with the character played by Emily Blunt, Margaret Fairchild, who is the Kansas City weathercaster. So he's been playing around with the idea of humans getting enhanced powers and so forth. And by the way, since we are in a spoiler-free environment, as you said, I think that first of all, I think all of us have had our own reactions. Brent and I had the opportunity to actually observe this thing twice in a very short period of time. And one of the things that I would say is that night after seeing it with George Knapp, we went out and had a beer afterwards, thinking that the two of us would sort of like have this very interesting back and forth about what we just saw. But both of us at the time said, I need some more time to process this. I mean, we wanted to have that conversation, but neither one of he liked it, I think, the first time more than I did on first blush. But both of us were like, I'm going to have to sit with this a little bit, because the movie is trying to do several things. As you pointed out in your introduction, it's trying to succeed as a summer blockbuster. That's probably job one from the studio's point of view. Job two is trying to succeed as something that is bringing Disclosure closer to fruition or whatever. Now, when I saw it with Jesse Michaels, I turned to him thinking he would have the same reaction, of course, that I had with George Knapp, which is, I'm going to have to say, but I turned to him and said, well, what's your take? And he said, I loved it.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, I saw him put that on social media. Yeah, he
this was not no complications to it. I loved it. And by the point we're at now, Brent and I have discussed it enough, and I'm sure you have thought about it enough. You start to have opinions, and I think my opinions are evolving on it, to be candid. They're not the same as they were night one. They're not the same as they were 3 days ago. and knows where they're going to end up. But I'm in motion on this film right now.
Yeah, I think that's good because, I left Bryce, like you, rather frustrated after seeing the movie. I do believe I think I owe it to myself as a UFO person to go see it again. I think I kind of, we'll dive into that.
Sure.
What I think is important, I'm going to give a little synopsis of the movie,
Yeah,
and then
you
we'll
should.
get into
You should.
let's do that. And then we'll kind of do what you did on your mini review of like UFO stuff. We'll dig into that, and then obviously the more movie making aspect of it and what you guys thought of it as a film. But let's give this little brief synopsis here. We have cybersecurity expert Daniel Kellner, who was played by Josh O'Connor, discovers undeniable proof that extraterrestrial life has been secretly known by powerful organizations for decades. He risks everything to expose the truth. At the same time, Kansas City meteorologist Margaret Fairchild begins experiencing bizarre psychic phenomena after a mysterious encounter connected to the same hidden secret. As both become targets of a vast cover-up operation, they are drawn together on a race across America that could change humanity forever. The question is no longer whether we are alone. It is whether the world is ready to know the truth. So that's the elevator pitch. That's kind of what the overall plot of this thing was. This is obviously, guys, directed by Steven Spielberg, but you've got Josh O'Connor, Emily Blunt as kind of our main protagonist. You got Colin Firth as our main antagonist. And then you've got Coleman Domingo, who was probably my favorite character in this entire movie and one of the best performances, in my opinion. How he was written, we'll get into a little bit more. But that was kind of our main cast with this thing, the main idea of what the movie was about. So I have some interesting facts for you guys about how this movie is doing. It is on track for a $94 million worldwide opening. Domestically, 45 million, worldwide almost 50 million. So, I mean, that's pretty darn good when I think the budget was around 115 million or something like that. So it's doing very well. It's getting butts in the seats, which I think is really cool. And I actually did this little comparison here for opening weekend showdown. And if you take into consideration inflation, it's pretty much on par with the opening of Close Encounters of the Third Kind, which I found pretty interesting.
Wow.
So those are some little tidbits going into this review. People are seeing it. What people thought about it and what the UFO community thinks about it, I think that's where we should go next for sure. So where should we start? I guess with the UFO stuff. We all had expectations going in of how deep they would get into that. Like we said, Spielberg's pretty knowledgeable, but Spielberg was not the writer of this movie. So I guess let's start there. UFO wise, where should we start?
It's interesting. That is correct. That in the actual screen credits, David Koepp, who has worked with Spielberg on the Jurassic Park films and also wrote War of the Worlds with him, is the listed writer. And he is the guy that typed fade in and went through and wrote a script. But let's also remember that Steven Spielberg, in this case, supposedly on his iPad, typed up 55 single-spaced pages and basically delivered it to David Koepp and said, "What do you think, my friend?" And Koepp, being no fool, said, "I think it's brilliant. Let's make a movie here." So I think you really, other than the artifact or the of how the Writers Guild is going to ascribe a credit on something, you really got to say this is co-written by these two guys in terms of the creative way that it came to be. That's all. Just a little aside.
But even still, the first words, the idea, the vision was Steven's.
Yes.
He put it all on paper. He came to David. David came on board and they collaborated, right? That's a common process in Hollywood. But this story was Steven's singularly. And as we just talked about, this is a character journey that he had been thinking about and trying to explore in different permutations for decades. So it felt like a very personal story in that regard, right? This is one that he'd been wanting to tell for a long time. I think there's some interesting parallels to Close Encounters, right? People were always saying, is this the sequel, the unofficial sequel to Close Encounters? Mm-hmm. Philosophically, maybe in some ways, but there's also a lot of interesting structural comparisons that you could make to Close Encounters, all leading to storylines leading to an event, right, that is going to change the world. Now, and it didn't change the entire world, but it certainly changed the characters in Close Encounters. And in this, you have even a shot that reminded me of Close Encounters, where at the end in the TV studio, you have the Jane character, Daniel's girlfriend, pushing through the crowd, trying to get closer to Daniel, just like Melinda Dillon did in Close Encounters up on the rooftop, trying to get to Roy Neary. So there's a number of things that you start to feel like, oh, this had a lot of similarities, and yet they were two very distinctly different movies.
Right. I think I read a interview where Kep said, this is not a direct sequel, it's a spiritual sequel. Right. I love that, Brent. I think you're right.
Although Ryan, wouldn't it, just as a mental excursion, I think it would have been extremely interesting to actually see the actual sequel, because Close Encounters, Roy Neary gets on a ship.
Yeah.
Project Circle, goes away. And,
right.
I really kind of wonder what happened to him. Where did these space brothers take him, and how long has he been gone, and what happened to him? Right. And that would have all been fascinating. But you're right. This is a spiritual sequel. I would say that. The one thing that I would that hits me is it is nice to say, well, let's talk about the ufological, then we'll review it as a movie. The truth is they're so intermixed, because part of the problem for me is I went in, like a lot of people, going, wow, Spielberg says it's the truth. It's called Disclosure Day. Bring it on. Okay. And so there you are sitting in your seat and you're like, oh my God. And then a UFC fight or whatever it was, it takes place first. And that's fine. I mean, that was an interesting way for things to get started. No problem with that. But you realize very quickly in this film that you're in for a chase faster than you're in for a revelation. You are not getting instant revelation. In fact, you're not instantly into hardcore ufology. You're into a hardcore chase. And I think one of the things, candidly, is Spielberg is a world-class director. He's the most popular director ever. So, I'm not trying to take anything away from him, but the chase itself, because so many people have done these high action films, and it's an art form in its own right now. The idea that you can see, think of the Bourne Identity. Think of that level of quality. So he basically ceded the territory that he might have ordinarily had, which is, I'm the only guy that can really talk about what UFOs are all about, and instead competed on the racetrack of a chase, which lots of people have been successfully able to do. And there are some moments in the chase that take you out of the film, because you're slapping your head and going, what is this guy doing? So I think that is competes a little bit with trying to get your brain into what he's really trying to say is his message.
Yeah. So I want to go back to something you mentioned, Ryan, because I think it's a really important word, if not framing device, for our entire conversation, which is expectations. So there's two sets of expectations that, for instance, the three of us brought to the movie. Now, the general public is bringing one expectation, like, entertain me, right? And very specifically, if you're calling your movie Disclosure Day, then when I get to the end of the movie, do I feel like that was earned, like that I just saw a movie? Forget about whether I'm invested emotionally in actual disclosure. Do I feel like this movie showed me how Disclosure Day would come about, right? Just on that level. So there's that expectation. Does the title and the promise of the movie get paid off in the end? I think we can talk about that in a moment. But then there's the additional layer where when you come in and you, as Bryce said, you think there might be actual truth in this, there might be actual disclosure, then you're trying to watch the movie on that level as well. So for all of us, we're watching it through two competing lenses, right? Because for the movie to be successful just in and of itself as a movie, it just needs to show that here's a plausible way in which disclosure might come about, whether you believe that to be true or not. Then for us, though, we have to come out of it and say, did I feel like I actually got disclosed to? Right? Those are two different issues. So let me just start the first conversation, which is, was it successful in making you believe this is how disclosure would come about? Okay. The very specific question in there is, who's disclosing in this movie? I asked Bryce this earlier. I'm going to ask you, Ryan. Who's disclosing in this movie?
Who's disclosing?
Think hard, Ryan, and make sure you get it right, because I screwed it up bad.
Yeah, it's a trick question.
Yeah.
Okay. I would say the extraterrestrial presence, intelligence.
Bingo.
Give them
Bryce, are you taking notes?
Yeah.
Take notes.
Very nice.
I understand what you're saying. Yeah. I mean, yeah. I mean, the information obtained that sets off this chase, that's not disclosure per se, but the act. Yeah, I get what you're saying, Brent. We'll dive into it as we get to the
Ryan,
end of the.
There's something else going on here, though, because it's a movie called Disclosure Day, so it exists on the meta level of, is the actual making of a film helping disclosure? Is it part of Disclosure Day, which is very meta? But then the movie itself lives in the world where Dolan and I wrote that book, AD After Disclosure, where we were trying to talk to ourselves about how will disclosure actually happen. Well, I would argue, we always said, is it a hard cut or is it a slow dissolve, right? Well, the Disclosure Day movie is the hard cut version, right? Wherever we are, and then boom, here comes the multiple terabyte dump of photos and videos and even exposure to an alien body. But in reality, the reality we live in today, we are living in a world of slow dissolve disclosure. And we have been roughly since 2017. And I think that you would have to argue that the meta part of the movie exists as just one of the linchpins in the slow disclosure. We've been getting White House disclosure of documents. We've got whistleblowers. We've got Congress involved with asking people, with bringing in testimony and demanding more evidence. And so the movie that Spielberg's done outside of on the meta level is a punctuation point to what we're already living in. And I would think, let me put it this way. I believe that whoever's in charge, whether it was at what point a Majestic 12 or something like that, now we have this cutout in the movie of private enterprise known as Wardex. And the thing is, they're not particularly good at their job in this movie.
No, they are not.
Okay. And I think that that's what disqualifies Disclosure Day as a film about how a disclosure event can happen a little bit, because there are so many points in the movie where a really motivated and competent Wardex would have just, I don't know, they were willing to use lethal force before, and they were certainly trying to do it now. They just put a bullet through the guy, been better shots, or showed up earlier, or seen him sneaking up on them, or any of the things. They just weren't as good. They were not as good as I expect the real people who are in charge actually are.
Yeah. Good point. Yeah. I mean, they were bumbling at one, but there was one point where Daniel, our character, who's kind of this amalgamation of UAP whistleblowers, whether it's like a David Grush or a Elizondo, Jay Stratton, I kind of rolled them all up into a disclosure ball. And that's kind of what Daniel represented to me. He worked for Wardex. He was sick of the truth being withheld from the public. I'm gonna take it all. And then you've got our private company, or as David Grush would say, private contractors are the ones with all the stuff, the craft, the the information and stuff. So that was a good deep cut, I think Spielberg did, was showing that this isn't the military and the US government per se holding the information from you. They've basically outsourced it to this corporation to do that, to hold the secrets. So that was pretty, I liked that. I thought that was a good way to go with it.
You know, and Ryan, one of the things that I think we have to acknowledge here is that Spielberg says it's the truth, right? And my first viewing, I watched it and said, is it the truth? Are there really two chosen people? And then what about all these other abductees? What about Betty and Barney and Travis Walton and Whitley Strieber and the hundreds of thousands of others? Do they think that it's just two people? Well, then what are they for, right? The second time I watched it, I said, okay, that's maybe what he would argue is that's my story points. That's my fable of disclosure that I'm telling. What are the deeper truths that he's actually telling? And I would say he's gone back to, and I agree with him. What was the tagline of Close Encounters? We are not alone. That's what set the world on fire. Somebody said those words out loud, and they had not been said out loud in that way ever before. So major kudos to Spielberg, the young Spielberg, for doing that. That is still his truth of Disclosure Day. So on the meta level, the larger level, I don't know if that's meta, but on the larger level, the truth that he's talking about is, one, we are not alone. Two, it's not the government per se that's got all this stuff. It's migrated into private contractors, right? And three, these aliens have their own agenda as well. But the only part where, so on those three, I sort of agree with them all. The fourth part is there's only one kind of alien, the gray, in this movie.
Right.
I part company with him on that. I do not think that's the truth. I think that's a misfire if you're going to look at just basic, hardcore, high concept truth. I don't buy that one. Everything I've seen, and I'm sure you guys, I'd love to see you guys if you disagree, but it sure looks to me like if there's one, there's three. If there's three, there's a dozen. You know, there's more than one out there.
Yeah. Well, I agree with everything you guys just said, but I'm going to steer the conversation in a slightly different direction now. So when we talk about truth, I want to bring up something that Bryce and I have talked about on our podcast, Sound, Light, and Frequency. And I think, Ryan, we even talked about it in a previous episode with you. I was disclosed to when I was 18 by a government official named John Harrington, who was part of the Reagan administration in the 80s. And I'm not going to go into the whole conversation, but two things he said to me, which are critical to our kind of analysis of this movie. One was when I asked him why the public didn't know, right? Well, why was this truth not being foretold? I mean, told to the general population. And he said to me in 1981, we are a God-fearing country. And if you take away religion, it will unravel everything. And that is going to unravel then the global economy, because people are going to lose their belief and their purpose. And we need people to go to work. And that's the control mechanism that keeps order on the planet. That was the general conceit. So at the end of our conversation, I said to him, well, when do you think we will ever know the truth? When will disclosure ever happen? And he said, I don't know, maybe in our lifetime, but only if it has to. Okay. Okay. That's real. That happened. That a person in the know who became Secretary of Energy in Reagan's second term and was connected to the Navy. So if you know anything about ufology, those are some real kind of like nexus points. So he says all of that to me. Now look at the movie. What's happening in the movie? What's the backdrop of the movie? World War III. It's a whole DEFCON 2 level threat with North Korea. So why is Disclosure Day happening? Because it has to, right?
Yes.
And by the way, to the question I asked you, who's bringing about disclosure? Well, it's the alien itself, right? The alien itself behind the scenes to the breakaway group within Wardex is the one that influenced the character that you like, Hugo, played by Coleman Domingo, to hire Josh O'Connor, whose name is Daniel in the movie, to become part of Wardex. Why? Not just because he was a talented hacker, but because he was an experiencer who was going to be activated to become one of the two ambassadors with Emily Blunt, Margaret, in the movie. So all of this disclosure is happening behind the scenes, right? We don't learn all of this until much later in the movie, because an alien has looked at planet Earth, where it is living currently, and seeing World War III approaching and saying, we have to have disclosure now to save the human race. That is how and why disclosure is happening in this movie.
Interesting.
Great
Can I
point.
share? Rarely good point. Yeah. I want to share one thing with you guys. This is hilarious. Because it kind of has to do with what you said. I think both of these experiencers were activated for different reasons. I love the way you kind of phrased that, Brent. And that's why we're only following these two, is because, and I also agree with Bryce in his mini review that, like, really two experiencers from America are the only ones that are going to disclose the truth about this. But this is what happened. So you have this scene in the beginning with Emily Blunt, who I'm sure we will sing her praises throughout this review. There's a moment where she's in her apartment with her boyfriend and a bird flies into the window. They have this weird kind of moment with the bird, and then boom, she starts speaking Russian. She's never spoken Russian in her life.
Right.
Later, she ends up speaking Korean, I believe it was, at one point as well. So whatever these things that are happening, that they're triggering her to speak other languages. I'm not kidding you. After seeing the movie, I come home to my apartment, where I always leave my window slightly ajar for air circulation. I come in, and on my coffee table is a pigeon just sitting on my coffee table. And it took me and my partner, it took us 20 minutes to get this thing out of the apartment. It shit everywhere. I had to wash everything. And I was saying things I've never said in my life.
But not in Korean, though.
Not in Korean, more just profanities at that point. But I was like, you can't make this stuff up. I come home and there's a bird in my apartment. That was just the funniest.
I think you've been chosen, Ryan. I think you better be prepared.
Activated, yeah.
The thing is, you brought something up that I want to put out there, because my first reaction, and I think I did say this to George Knapp over that beer, although it was tentatively said at the time, because I was still trying to think through it. I was going, it reminds me of and then I went, I know, it feels like a Marvel origin movie for a person that gets superpowers. She's triggered. She doesn't know what her past is, but suddenly she can speak Korean. She can speak Russian. She can speak alien. She is able to turn invisible and have other people do as Brent said, I guess the Obi-Wan Kenobi thing, right?
Yeah.
Nothing to see here. And she's able to read minds. She's a supreme empath. And these are superpowers. She has turned into a superhero in this thing. And so on first glance, I found that I was a little wanting in that. I felt like, and for one very good reason, I think, I don't actually think that's what the reality of Contact is. I don't think the Earth is about to be turned into a planet full of super-powered people by an alien race. I could be wrong, but that just doesn't seem like it to me. So I had to, in order to embrace the film for what it's trying to do, I had to write off all that stuff in my head and go, that's Spielberg finding a vehicle to deliver his truth. Mm-hmm. And that's why I started focusing on the larger truth, just so I could say, I don't want to, if this is a big cultural moment and other people whose opinion I care about are saying, well, I found a lot to like in it, then I need to say, okay, let me be empathic for a moment. Let me try to understand what they're seeing in it that I'm not yet seeing in it. And so that's how I've sort of rationalized where I'm coming out on this thing. To just sort of say, other people are seeing a slightly different movie than I saw.
Yeah.
And why is it? But and then I'll just close with this thought. But there's nothing unusual about that. The one thing working in Hollywood and having things that you make turned into film or television is that you put something out there into the world, and it doesn't matter what you thought it was about. The audience will tell you what it's about. They will watch it, and they will tell you what should be thought of about your project. And certainly that's been true for everything I've ever done.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, please, Brent.
No, go ahead. You first.
Oh, no, I just, since we were talking about all the stuff with the character that Emily Blunt played, Margaret, I found it really, I kept going back to Jacques Vallée. I don't know if you guys I feel like that's where a lot of Spielberg got his research in terms of her powers, her abilities, what the aliens imparted to her as an experiencer. This whole idea of like the control system, consciousness, and just kind of being able to like manipulate perception. There's one point in the movie where she can literally make you think you're seeing a dead family member or your son, or she knows that, hey, I know your husband was abusive, you should call the cops, like just do it. Like she can read minds, she can see the future. She has all these superpowers, Bryce, as you put it. And it did remind me a lot of what Jacques Vallée has said throughout the years of like this control system.
It feels very it feels though like by the way, it's raining like hell outside here in Austin right now. I'm looking out my window.
Interesting.
Well, okay. I produced a TV series called The Crow Stairway to Heaven a few years back. And The Crow had those abilities too, to make people see things that weren't there. So it felt very much superhero-ish to do all that at the end, because I really, as I look at the phenomenon, I do agree with you about Jacques Vallée. I mean, obviously he's saying there's more here than nuts and bolts, and there's way more here than meets the eye. I do agree with that. But I have, even in my deepest Vallée dive, I haven't actually felt that's something he's uncovered, that there are those of us out here who can make people see things that that aren't really existing. I'm just not sure that's what the phenomenon is about, but I could be wrong.
Well, on that point, I'm going to offer a slightly contrarian point of view here.
Great.
Because here's the thing. The first time I saw the movie, as we all experienced, I had expectations. I wanted it to work on two levels. I wanted it to be a great blockbuster, and I wanted to feel like I was getting some truth that I had been promised by Steven Spielberg, that there would be actual disclosure happening. So there was a lot of cognitive dissonance in that first movie, because I was kind of saying, well, there's things I'm not liking about the movie itself as a summer blockbuster, and then where's the disclosure? And so by the end, I was like, okay, was the whole experience bad, or were there what happened? And I really, as you said, Bryce, I needed a beer to process the whole thing. I needed a couple of days. Yeah. The second time I saw the movie, I thought, okay, expectations, put them to the side. Now I just want to evaluate the movie. And then afterwards, I'll sit back and think, okay, looking through kind of the entire film, the narrative, what pieces of disclosure could I extract? So I wanted to try and just think about it as a movie. Here's the thing. If you take literally what we just talked about, which is that, wait a minute, so the aliens can give you all of these incredible powers and you become like a superhero? Like, do we believe that? Is that what we think is going to happen? No. But if you think about it metaphorically, right, as a summer blockbuster, where it seems like every other movie is about superheroes, then that's something maybe that the audience could relate to. So let's take broad strokes and give a woman a very powerful set of tools, right? Psi tools, essentially, because she's going to need them to help navigate through this chase that she's going through, where everyone's trying to stop her and the Josh O'Connor Daniel character. So there is a lot of plot contrivances and a lot of things you would see in a superhero movie, right? But isn't that the parlance of Hollywood today? So take that for a moment. Now step back and say, okay, well, what's the message behind that, though? What is really being said? If I don't take it literally, if I take it metaphorically, it's that these aliens are going to upgrade humanity. And specifically, specifically, how are they going to upgrade it? Well, you'll get some psi powers, but the real thing that you're going to be upgraded with is empathy. Spielberg said this many times leading up. Empathy is a superpower, and why do the characters in this movie need to be empathetic? But also, what's the message within the movie that's trying to be disseminated? It's a world on the brink of World War III. So what do humans need to do? They need to wake up and become more empathetic. They need to think about others. And if I start a war, I'm going to kill millions of innocent people. I don't want to do that, right? So if somehow humanity could be upgraded with their ability to be more empathetic, it would tone down and dial down all of the hostilities in the world. But here's the interesting thing. Here's the thing that even after I was willing to kind of look at the movie with this fresh set of eyes the second time and show a little grace in terms of interpreting it, there's still something that doesn't sit quite right with me, which is if the message of the movie is, as they say, here's the thing. Remember the little clickety-clack thing that she says at the beginning that Margaret says, well, she's the newscaster, and it was in the first trailer, and everyone went, what's that? And then later, Josh O'Connor's character says, I understand that. And what the truth is, don't be afraid of what you don't know. So it's like basically don't fear the unknown. Don't fear the other. Don't fear us, the aliens. Just because we're 8 foot tall and look scary, don't be scared of us. We're here to help humanity. That's what's being conveyed, correct?
Yeah.
Don't fear what you don't know.
What you don't know, don't understand. But it was some version.
Don't fear what you don't understand.
Yeah. But now think about what is being conveyed with these powers being bestowed, and even in that scene I just talked about, what is happening? Behind the scenes, you have an alien that's far more powerful and advanced than any human on the planet that is able to jump into, through their consciousness, Margaret's character, or Emily Blunt's character, while she's giving a newscast and speak through her without her permission. Well, that's called possession.
Yeah.
So now you're into something where, okay, so the aliens can do this. The aliens are saying this is for our own good. But we might have to take possession of you. We might have to get in and rewrite your DNA. And even the scene that they show it happen to the 10-year-old kids is pretty harrowing. One of the kids is crying, right? So it's a little traumatizing. So the message is, if you would allow us as this alien race and trust that we are benevolent and have only your best interests at heart, we will put you through a pretty harrowing process, probably be traumatic for some of you, but we're going to upgrade you and make you more empathetic so that you can then jump into each other, right? Or that we can jump into you. And when I think about all of those things, when I think about the fact that they then give the humans these 3 devices, which we can talk about later, why three, but whatever. The 3 devices are essentially training wheels. So before you get all of the alien powers where you can just do it with your mind, you can use one of these things to literally take control of another person, just as the Colin Firth character does. Scanlon, in the middle of the movie, takes control of Daniel's girlfriend named Jane, gets her to literally puppet her to the point where she picks up a knife and she is going to kill someone.
Yeah.
How can you not read that as demonic possession? Metaphorically.
But also look at her eyes in that scene.
Very much.
I mean, I've seen that in a lot of horror films.
Right.
The way that her
eyes
is
scary.
There. Yeah.
You know what it reminds me of, guys? There's that one line in Arrival, where you have a linguist being the one who's kind of our antagonist. Yeah. And she says, like, we need to know the language because otherwise this tool is either a tool or it's a weapon. And I think you're right, Brent. Like, these devices, they've imparted that abilities and whatnot through these devices to Emily Blunt's character, but then Colin Firth has a piece of it too. Yeah. They can be used for vastly different things.
Yeah.
So it's unsettling. And like you said, the whole possession thing, which I would love to talk to you guys about, dovetailing off of possession, the religious.
Yes. That was next on my list too. That was next on my list. Huge.
That
huge
was pretty interesting. So yeah, let's go there. What do you guys think?
Ryan, you kick it off. I mean, you obviously
Sure.
have some thoughts about this, as I know Bryce and I do as well. But it is a big component of the movie, and it spills over into real life in some interesting ways too. So please tee us up.
I think I know what you're going to bring up. Suzanne, our co-host, and I covered this story last week, where this priest in my hometown, originally from my hometown of Syracuse, New York, was fired by the Archbishop for commenting on UFOs, aliens, and how they could possibly be demonic. This was a big story. He got let go by the Archdiocese for going out in public and saying that UFOs and aliens are demonic. Crazy stuff.
Saying that they are demonic. That's interesting.
Yes.
Because
they were like,
this thing's all about the Catholic Church in Spielberg's movie, and the Catholic Church, although there's been a little bit of back and forth on it, but generally speaking, the Catholic Church has historically seemed to be saying, hey, it's a gigantic universe and God is in charge of all of it, and he could make other people, which is why they have the Catholic nun basically saying, why would he make a place this big just for us?
Yeah.
Right.
So I loved this part of the movie. I thought it gave because it is what a lot of the audience is going to be thinking. Yeah. And I'm sure, and Bryce, you tackle this in your book as well. Right. How will religion react to something this profound? And I love how this character in the movie, who was once going to become a nun, went to her superior, as it were, and asked, because I did the same thing. I went to confession when I was an altar boy as a kid. I went to confession because I had just had a UFO sighting. I was starting to read books by Steven Friedman and all this stuff. And I'm like, oh, aliens, is this okay? Am I allowed to believe in this? So I went to confession and asked through the partition of my priest, I am obsessed with aliens and I want to keep looking into this and I believe in it. Is this okay? Story for another time. He said, yep. He basically said what this nun said in the movie. So I'm glad that it was kind of on the same page. This character in the movie asks, is it okay? What if I told you aliens were real?
Well, I got another question for you, though. What if Spielberg, instead of saying, I'm going to focus on a Catholic centric point of view on religion, what if he'd focused instead on the Christian the evangelical Christian community, because a lot of them think it's angels and demons.
Yes.
Okay, they're not as open-minded as the Catholic nun in this movie, and in fact, we've got some evidence that there are factions within the Pentagon and throughout the UFO cover-up who are strongly like, hey, angels and demons. And in fact, Brent, you remember this because when you and I first met, your wife was my assistant, and I was working on a show called Mantis, and there was a guy named Coleman Luck who was a friend of mine there, and he knew more about UFOs than anybody I knew. And he knew more than you and me at the time combined. He was so knowledgeable, you could bring up anything. But he would just laugh when you mentioned they might be ET, because he would just say, no, that they're demons. You're going to learn soon enough.
Yeah. Well, so Ryan, I found Spielberg's very explicit inclusion of religion in this movie one of his boldest moves, right? I wasn't expecting that. That was completely beyond my expectations, that he would go that literal, right? Where he has a Catholic nun, right? So I thought the film would have spirituality in the same way that I could find some hints of it in Close Encounters of the Third Kind, but not so overtly as in this movie. But there's two interesting things we need to talk about. One is, in the lead up to the movie, Spielberg said a number of times that some religious people are going to have to adjust their beliefs, right, in order to accept the truth of his movie. Now, what beliefs is he talking about?
Right.
Right. And yet he's trying to accommodate, the the Catholic Church, at least, by having a nun saying, "Oh, why would God have made the universe just for us?" So that was very like, okay, bring it on, whatever the story is. So I think that's a fascinating thing to talk about first, and ask ourselves, well, what was Spielberg really trying to say about religion? But then the other thing I just want to throw in and let you guys kick it around is, as this is happening in the movie, in the lead up, it wasn't just the story about the archbishop that was canceled because he said angels and demons. If you remember, when the Trump administration was getting ready to release some documents, they dispatched a handful of Congress people to go talk to pastors
That's right. Yeah.
Yes, to prepare them for what was coming down the pipeline, because it was going to be very difficult for their flocks to accept the truth. How does all of this connect together?
I totally forgot about that mysterious meeting amongst pastors. Yeah. Interesting stuff. Yeah, I liked it. And I like the fact that, like, this character of Jane, she asks the mother, the nun, will this change my faith? Should it change my faith in God? Yes. She says, I don't think you're ever going to have an absence of faith in God. I think you have it's the faith in humanity that you're losing.
Yes. That was a great one.
I loved that. Yeah, like kudos to David Cope on that one, if he wrote that one. There's other lines that I took a lot of issue with. We'll get there.
I'd love you to throw out right now a line that you took a lot of issue with, because we're leaning a little positive here for people that were taken aback by some of the things in the film. Yes. So I think we should throw a little shade on it too at the same time. So what do you got?
Okay. I'll make mine brief, because I'd rather hear from you guys as professional screenwriters. I'm a playwright. Like, I went into this movie, like, whenever I see a movie, I have that curse of, like, I'm not just enjoying the movie. I'm analyzing the editing, the pacing, the structure of the scene,
of course,
the third act. But for me, dialogue is everything to me as a playwright. And I would say my favorite character was Coleman Domingo, yet he is the one who got the most, I would say, shortcomings when it came to dialogue. I took issue with almost every line this man had, Hugo, the character of Hugo, when it came to talking about UFOs.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
I hate to say it, but you had this beautiful scene that could have been really good between Hugo, who left Wardex, this corporation, to be a part of this splinter group that's going to disclose the truth, and Colin Firth, the head of the corporation. And they have this sit-down, remote viewing sit-down, I should say. Well, I should throw that in there, because that's crazy. But of the 80-year campaign needs to end, and this and that. And then he starts, it was just word vomit of the most surface level UFO stuff.
Yeah.
And I just was like, oh my God, this is so, like, I think I said in my mini review, they Googled UFOs and wrote that dialogue into whatever came up on the first page. I hate talking ill of other writers, because clearly, like, this man has earned his place in the pantheon of filmmaking and working with Spielberg. But it was almost every line spoken about UFO facts that I took issue with, because they just seemed so forced and so Wikipedia-ish to me personally. So that's my little qualm when it comes to
it's funny that you are a man of 2 points here. One is he's your favorite character, but you took issue with everything he said. And
it's a little contradictory.
He was my least favorite character. I didn't find his performance that compelling. My favorite performance, obviously, Emily Blunt is, pretty darn good in this thing, and she's obviously a very talented actress, and she really brought it. And she even made up the alien clicking sound.
Right.
That was not AI, and that was not special effects. She was actually doing that. So, I mean, I couldn't do that. So that great work,
Yeah.
Emily. And let's define again who Coleman Domingo is. There's a breakaway group called Wardex who is managing the secret, but within the breakaway group, Coleman Domingo, who you see here, is inside a sub-breakaway group, right? That's trying not to manage the secret, but to get the secret out. So there's a lot of different currents going on here, but he just didn't. He didn't strike me as formidable enough with a plan that was formidable enough to stand up to the real secret keepers. But obviously, that's how he's portrayed in this thing. But I don't have a lot of things. I mean, I was cringing with a lot of things that he said, but I wasn't as dialed in as you to actually remember them. I don't remember it. I put them all out of my head. I don't remember them right
now. Yeah. What'd you think, Brent?
Well, so with regards to the Hugo Coleman Domingo character, I'm kind of in the middle. He wasn't my favorite character. He wasn't the character I hated the most, as I think, Bryce seemed to say. I didn't like a lot of his dialogue. I like that actor. So he kind of drew me in. I like the idea of that role, but he came across to me as too much of like a guardian angel character or something. And with how stressful everything was, he always had like this slight benevolent smile on his face, which I felt was like tone deaf to the situation.
But Brent, I'm with you 100%. That is my opinion. I did find that's what irked me, but go ahead, continue.
So, but I'm going to focus on a different character because as a screenwriter, my pet peeve was the bad guy. Okay. Now you want to say, oh, you're talking about Scanlon. Forget about Scanlon for a moment. Scanlon was an administrator. The real bad guy in this movie was Boyd. Boyd was his second in command, his subservient.
That's right. Yeah.
And
ruthless.
What did Boyd do the whole time? Even when Scanlon had been like, let him go, Boyd did not let them go. Boyd is the one who pushed them into the train, tried to kill them, and then drove alongside the train, was shooting them as they're hanging off the train. Boyd was the person at the end, even when Scanlon kind of accepted that this all was happening, Boyd stomped off. I'm so mad, right?
Yeah.
And from a screenwriting standpoint, what motivated him? What was his big philosophical issue, right? Was it that, for instance, here's a contrivance. You're going to find out, Scanlon's 1 year from retiring, and guess who's going to inherit the head of Wardex? It's Boyd. But if all of this goes away, now Boyd's losing his job. Okay, well, that's dumb, but at least it would have been like a reason. You know what the only reason in the whole movie is? And when I say this, you're going to go, oh, I forgot about that. When Josh O'Connor, when the Daniel character early on in the movie is put into like what looks like checkmate, he's caught at that. It's right at the very beginning.
In the beginning, yeah.
In the beginning, right after the wrestling match, which you already noted. He's brought out. They have his girlfriend. They're gonna trade all of the material that he stole for the girlfriend. Right? They go through. Okay, all the media is here. Great. Where's that little device? We want the device that was stolen. But he's holding it. Josh is holding it in his back pocket, and he ends up using it and the threat of it to get his girlfriend and the media and get away. Now, when I say this, you're going to be really pissed off. At the end of that scene, Josh O'Connor gets away and Scanlon walks over to Boyd and goes, he works in an office and look what he just did to you. Now, nothing else is said about Boyd in the whole movie, but that slight is enough to propel him to all of the dastardly deeds he does the rest of the movie. From a screenwriting standpoint, I'm like, no, like that is so mustache twirly kind of 101, villain 101. That was one of my biggest peeves with not just that character, but the whole movie.
Okay. I'm glad you said that because again, I think what the movie was missing, and maybe it was just scenes that were cut, moments that were cut. Like we all know what that's like. You got to kill your babies. But one aspect of the entire movie, as Brent, you pointed out, what the movie is actually about, empathy and this and that. The biggest aspect that did not land for me, and I almost forgot about, was the impending World War III.
Yes.
I do not think they covered this enough to warrant disclosure being a possible resolution to what could be the end of the world. There's that one scene where they're running away. They go to this gas station and people are hoarding for food. It was very pandemic-y and like, and I was like, why are these people freaking out? What's going on? I'm like, Emily Blunt was seen on TV doing some weird clicking noises, but that's not going to drive the world crazy. This local meteorologist doing something weird on TV. Like, why are they freaking out? And then I'm like, oh my God. Oh yeah. There's this backstory of an impending World War III.
Yep.
That completely went to the back burner.
And not only did it go to the back burner, but I remember, first of all, I agree with you, by the way, that there was no hint of that panic until that scene. And that was a little jarring. But at the same time, let's take a look at it from the uber level of UFO history. What do we know that Spielberg knows himself, which is these devices that they're going to tell everybody about and show them all the video of have been routinely hovering over nuclear bases and power plants, and they've demonstrated they know how to turn stuff on and turn it off. Well, why was the alien plan, since as we've discussed, this was about an alien plan, why was the alien plan dependent on a couple of chosen people not getting their heads blown off by hundreds of agents firing at them? Why didn't the aliens just turn off the nukes? If they've spent 79 years figuring out where our nukes are, they know where they are. They've hovered over most of them around the world. They've been able to observe the world for nearly 8 decades. So I guess that's one little, it's nitpicky, but it is like, okay, if you're going to do a movie called Disclosure Day, but you're going to cherry pick which part of ufology is going to be invoked in the movie, but which parts aren't, that's a little unsatisfying to me, because I spend all my time trying to say, there's so many things out there. How do I reconcile all this madness? How do I make sense of abductions and crop circles? And speaking of crop circles, why was there a crop circle? Why was Daniel out there and they made a crop circle while he was there? Why? Who was it for?
Very random.
It didn't do anything. So I don't know. There were a lot of things. I want to throw something at you, Ryan, because Brent and I have discussed it. So we need to hear your take first before we weigh in on this. And it is kind of important. The very last thing said in the film is, remember, Granddaddy Gray gets out of the wheelchair, the big 8-foot gray. And he reaches over and he's huddling with Josh and Emily. And things are whispered from first the Gray to Josh, and then from Josh to Emily. And then Emily gets up, goes over to the news set, looks in the camera and says, "Listen." And we fade to black.
End of movie.
What's that all about? Why is that the message of the film?
So I might be cheating a little because obviously, like you guys, I went and started looking at interviews that the writer did on this and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
I will answer you with one of the biggest criticisms I will have of this movie. And Spielberg, I hate to say this, Close Encounters, I just did my first episode and video on my new show, the movie one, on Close Encounters being a masterpiece, in my opinion, in terms of a UFO movie. Except he did this in both movies, Close Encounters and Disclosure Day. It went a little too far and showed a little too much. I thought that in Close Encounters when we saw all the aliens, and I thought that again when they literally wheeled out an ancient alien in a wheelchair to impart this message that she then said, listen, I did not want to see the alien, Bryce, at all. I think it should have stayed behind the partition. Maybe we see Emily Blunt react to it, and that's it.
I thought aliens could mind read anyway. Why didn't he just mind meld with them and tell them the message?
Exactly. There were so many of those little things. The other big part is, and our good friend and colleague, Andy McGrillen of that UFO podcast, he said the same thing. He said, it should have ended. And I this is the writer in me being like, she inhales, cut to black. I didn't even want to hear the word listen.
Yeah.
Because I know what David was going for.
Well, what was he going for? In your opinion, what did listen mean? Whether in your head or the audience or David Kep, enlighten us. What's listen all about?
I think there's two ways it could go. Listen is a very good way to get someone to just listen instead of just droning on and on and on and on. People will now listen to whatever she's going to say next. And maybe she does start speaking the alien language. Maybe it unlocks something in everyone's minds and they can now understand this language of the universe or something like that. Or maybe that's all she says is listen. And if we all did that more, we wouldn't be in this situation. North Korea wouldn't be fighting with South Korea or Russia or the United States and Russia or this war and that war. If we listened more, this could solve all these problems. But then I also take a lot of issue with the agency of human beings and these aliens doing these things to us. I understand the potential of us destroying our planet could happen. Maybe they feel like, okay, enough's enough, we're getting involved. But I took so much issue with the final moments of the movie, which is the most important part of many movies, one could argue. Yep. And I think it's the biggest part that people are having a problem with this movie. Some people love it and some people absolutely hate it. There were people laughing in my theater at that last moment. There were people crying. Yep. I know for a fact, Suzanne, found it very powerful and emotional. I found it powerful, but the way these final moments of Disclosure Day are hitting people is so intriguing to me. Yeah, how different it is. So maybe that's the beauty of it. I don't know. What do you guys think? I blabbed way too long.
Well, I'm gonna take the contrarian point of view again here for a moment, just for the sake of discourse. The first time I saw it, I had exactly that same reaction. I was like, wait, what? I was frustrated. It annoyed me. It was not it was not the ending I wanted, clearly. And then, as I mentioned already, when I watched it the second time, I tried to just put all of that aside and just watch the movie. And something hit me the second time I saw it, a greater awareness. Now, I can't say for sure that this was the intention of the filmmakers. So I'm going to go out on a limb and give them credit for maybe something they didn't intend. But I felt like, given everything about the movie we've talked about, that it's a summer blockbuster, but it had all of this contextual wrapper of importance to actual disclosure, right? At the very end, I thought, well, what do people always say? They show me the saucers. Bryce even made a video out of that, which was great. But then the next thing is, or just bring an alien, just show me an alien. Just show
it out, literally.
Roll it out, and then now I have disclosure. Why can't that happen? You keep saying you have them in all these Air Force bases, just bring it. So what does he do? He rolls out an alien, right? Now, the awkwardness of it being an old alien that's like an old man standing from a rocking chair was something that made me snicker the first time I saw it. So it wasn't the best presentation of that idea. And the fact that, as you guys just talked about, why does he have to impart a message and there's all this whispering going on? I thought the aliens were much more powerful than that. Put all of that aside. Emily Blunt stands up and looks directly at the camera, not just to the audience in the movie, but to us in the theaters, to everyone else, and says, listen, okay? Well, what's happening in the course of her speech? You're not seeing it in that shot, but you've seen it many times in that last sequence. There is big screen with all of these different monitors, and there's all of these videos of disclosure happening. what's happening in our real world right now. On the screen, there's all of these. Bryce, I remember I walked into Bryce's hotel room and there was images from the newest release on Friday night, the new tranche, right? That's the world we're living in right now. The world where disclosure is happening, right? So what I took away from it was, okay, you just had a fun blockbuster, like movie ride. And at the end, it felt like the movie was passing the baton through the screen and saying, now in the real world, I want you to listen. I want you to just listen to what's happening all around you, because it's very much what's all happening all around. You know what? There was a convergence. It was like reality and the movie collided in that last movie, in that last moment. And granted, we don't have an alien, but who's to say that doesn't happen next week? We're right on the precipice of disclosure, right? With all of those movies, those monitors showing all of the media that's being released, right? And Bryce made a great point the other night, which is like, yeah, but all of the stuff that was in the movies looked good. And the stuff we're getting is all this black and white nonsense. Right. True, yes. But again, we're still in that same process that somehow the reality and the fantasy were blurring in that last scene. And when she broke the fourth wall and looked at the audience out in the theaters and said, listen, my feeling was, oh, that's the message. Get ready, because in the real world, disclosure day is happening.
Yeah, Brent, I doubt that David Koepp actually thought of that interpretation when he wrote it. I think interviews he's implied other things, but that's how it played. You are correct. It felt like that, whether it was intended or not intended, her saying that, looking directly into the camera, was in fact showing us her looking through the camera to her audience, but it played on the other level of also looking through the camera. I just had one thought, and as we're getting toward the end here, but if you think about Spielberg's career, Close Encounters, he does not take Roy Neary onto the craft, right? And what happened in 1980 is he wanted to shoot a couple other scenes, like those desert scenes, I think, that weren't in the first, or something wasn't in the original. He wanted to shoot stuff, and the studio said, yeah, but you got to take him on board the ship. And that was the devil's deal with the devil he made. He would get money to shoot other things, but he would take him on board the ship. And then later, when he got to do a director's cut, he cut that scene because it never sat right that he went in. But at the end of the day, Steven Spielberg is one of the most commercial directors we've had. He's had some, everybody's got hits, runs, and errors, but he's had a lot of hits because he's a very commercial artist and a very good one. So I just wonder if somehow in his mind, it was playing on him that, what did people really want? In Close Encounters, they wanted to see the ship. And here, maybe what he was thinking is they just want to see the alien, man. They don't want to see video of an alien. The escalation, if the first thing that he shows is Jackie Gleason getting to look at an alien, and the second thing he shows is an alien being sort of tortured by medical assistance, the escalation isn't to more images of that on the screen. The only payoff escalation is show me the alien, show me the ET. So that's what he did. That he felt like at the end of the day, maybe he thought, I got to do it, man. That's the way the business works. Got to give them what they need. And I will say also, Brent, I really winced the first time. And so, Ryan, I'm with you. I mean, there's just something, because first of all, the problem is we all have in our head what the aliens are supposed to look like. Yeah. We have in our head, but we're all different. We've seen grays described. We've seen Whitley Strieber's gray on the cover of Communion, but then we've seen, the alien gray has become a cartoon. We've seen the alien gray portrayed as Paul, voiced by Seth Rogen. There's a lot of different alien grays out there. And Brent, you and I have done it in Dark Skies. I did it in my movie Official Denial. Everybody's taken a crack at the alien. Yeah. So along comes Spielberg. He is the guy we most want to see what he thinks an alien looks like. But once he does it, it may not match what's in your head. And so I think some people, particularly some of my friends that have no clue what an alien should or should not look like, they may accept it more because it's part of the movie. But for people who think about it and obsess about it like all of us have, and many of the people in your audience, Ryan, have their own images. So there's a cognitive dissonance when Spielberg shows you exactly what one could look like. And it's not healthy, and it's super big. Maybe that.
Yeah. Well, yeah, we all had expectations, and I think that was no matter what he did, it was going to, not appease everyone. And the fact that it was just an alien gray, people were probably like, "Oh, really? That's it?" But I think the big thing I took away from this was I wanted your book, Bryce. I wanted to see the public's reaction to Disclosure Day, but that's not what this movie is. It is Disclosure Day the lead up to that.
You think there'll be a sequel where we will see that?
I would love that. I don't think it's going to happen unless
I'd like to write
you and
that
Rich
one.
pick up the reins and do it.
Brent, you and I should go write that one right now. Ryan, there's just one thing I want to say. Not that I think Steven Spielberg is watching us right now, but he might be. And if he was, and for the people, everybody, this is a Rorschach test, as we said. There's a lot of people in your audience reacting one way or the other. And I just want to make clear that what Ryan and Brent and I have done is what you're supposed to do. When you're presented with art, you discuss it, you dissect it, you criticize it, you praise it, whatever. At the end of the day, though, what I would say if I was sitting down with Steven Spielberg right now, I'd say, you've made a very important film. It doesn't matter that we have our little picky things about it, or even bigger things, but no one can take away that it's an important film, and it took creative guts for him to make it. And it's important that he did it. Whether he did it because there was some grand master plan where the Trump administration is releasing documents at the same time his movie comes out, or he just decided it's time for me, who knows? But I'm glad he did, because the result that he got by making this, whether it was everybody's perfect film or not, is that lots of people are talking about this now. The three of us who are informed are talking about it. Your audience who is informed is listening to it. But I've got the majority, the large majority of my friends aren't tuned into this. But most of them are going to see Disclosure Day. Probably 90% of my friends who don't pay attention to this issue when I talk about it, they don't listen to our podcast, Brent. They don't listen, they don't know who Ross Coulthard or Richard Dolan are, who we've taught, they don't know any of this. They don't pay attention when I talk about it, but they'll pay attention when Spielberg talks about it. And I know that's true because some of those people are already texting me saying, wow, I just saw Disclosure Day. What should I think about this in essence? So It's a good thing that's happened, Ryan. It's a good thing that you had us on. We appreciate it, and thank you for that.
Yeah. Oh, my pleasure, guys. Well, yeah, and I'll say my last thing here, and we'll wrap it up. But I think, Brent, going back to the listen thing, the last line of the movie, for me, what I took most from this movie, not just that Spielberg is interested in UFOs and creating his own fantasy idea of disclosure, but this was a love letter to experiencers for me. I think that they're seen and now they will be heard. There's all this talk that at these congressional UFO hearings, it's all about the videos and the military pilots and these trained observers having UFO encounters. Everyone's like, okay, cool. When is it time for Joe Schmo and the alien abductees and the experiencers? The first time that term has probably been used in a major motion picture in terms of the term experiencer. Screen memory was another big one in the movie too. Spielberg is introducing people to this language that we have known for so long, and now the public is going to know what it is and look into it. So for me, it showed me this overall message of have empathy. When you hear someone had a UFO sighting or says that they came into contact with some sort of non-human intelligence, you can't laugh it off anymore.
Right.
I mean, you simply can't. You have to just listen. You might not believe it, but at least try to listen. So, end of the day for me, this really gave experiencers a place in this conversation, and a place I think we will continue to have the conversation after. And it's getting people to go to the movie theaters again. And that's almost just as important for the three of us, at least, right?
Although Ryan beautifully said about experiencers. I mean, beautifully said, because even though Spielberg had a kid getting abducted in Close Encounters, and even though in Taken it was about people, it had people being abducted, it never really caught. Right. People talk about Close Encounters, but they rarely mention the kid gets abducted. That's just not part of it. And so what you're really pointing out is that this time it's the central part of his film.
They're the heroes. They're the heroes of the story, right? No, I love that interpretation. It's really powerful.
Yeah.
Well, thank you. Awesome, guys. Well, did we miss anything? Anything you wanted to throw in there before we we'll have to do it again, I know. Thank you.
Listen, our pleasure. Thank you for having us on. We do appreciate it.
Of course. We did a poll. Let's see what before I let you guys go, and then we'll promote the podcast, obviously. The poll was how would you rate Disclosure Day? Out of 71 votes, 30% said they gave it an A, 32% a B, 15% C, 23% D.
Yeah.
Interesting. It is very divided.
I think so. It's a polarizing film, and you've just proved it with your poll.
Yeah, I think so. I think you're right. Well, guys, tell us what comes next for Sound, Light, and Frequency. I'm loving the last episode you did on War of the Worlds. Oh, baby. I'm watching that tonight. I love that movie, and it's been a while. So I'm going to
We so appreciate your support. One thing I would just say is that there's two ways that people can. Well, first of all, as I always say, if you want to hear a podcast, just go wherever you get your podcast. But that means, in essence, for you as well as us, Apple and Spotify and iHeart and Pandora and all those places. But we have a little website called Sound, Light, Frequency. So there's no and or comment. Sound, Light, there it is, soundlightfrequency.com. And you can actually listen to it there and actually see some of the videos. But we also put all our videos at hollywoodufos.com, just so people can see them. There's two different experiences, as you know. One of them is watching a show, and one of them is listening to a show. They're both unique, and they're both fun. And we have been, we're honored that people pay attention to it and have said nice things about it. And we are at the halfway point, Ryan. We've just recorded our halfway episode, and we like to think it's an active investigation into how Hollywood and UFOs have been dealt with. And what we tried to do is exactly what we're doing here. Disclosure Day was meant to be the middle ground of this thing, allows us that demarcation line. And now we're going to try to take it home where we tie all these threads together. And final thing I would say is, if you want to please us, start with number one and work your way through. But you're welcome wherever you want to dip your toe in the water.
Yeah. I think Emily Blunt said it best. Listen.
I love that. That's great. Hey, thanks so much, my friend.
Yeah.
Appreciate
Thank you so much, guys. You can go ahead and head out. I'm going to do a little deeper.
Absolutely. You should. Here. Thank your audience, too. We love you guys. All
Absolutely.
Right.
Thank you, guys. True honor. Thank you. Talk to you soon. All right, guys. Wow. I could not think of two better people to have on just for a movie review, but of Disclosure Day. I went in like I was going to really attack this movie. I was so frustrated. But I think after hearing other people's thoughts on it and kind of looking at it more as a thought experiment, that really helped. I loved some of the references in the movie, like the Kecksburg UFO crash, the screen memories, the obviously the Roswell thing. The one thing I didn't bring up with these guys was in the trailers and stuff, Spielberg even said nothing from the third act of this movie have you seen in marketing or in any trailers. So get ready. And then literally all the UFO stuff in the trailer, that UFO coming out of the clouds, the pilot flying by the UFO, the Roswell archival footage, all of that was in the final few moments of the third act of the movie. All the UFO stuff was in the last 2 minutes of the movie when they disclosed everything. So it was a little weird in how they marketed this thing, maybe a little deceptive, as it were. But hey, that's what movie marketing is all about. But I hope you guys took something from this tonight. I hope we didn't sour your perception or your plans on seeing the movie. While we're critical, all three of us clearly agree that you should see this movie. Again, there are so many conversations happening after the movie, which is the point of any movie. And like we said, if you are a witness or an experiencer, like, this was for you. This movie was for you. It wasn't for the people who believe in a official disclosure by the government, because I personally don't think that's going to happen. Clearly, our characters in the movie didn't think that either. They had to do it, from a splinter cell and from the grassroots up. So that's how I think true disclosure is going to happen. If you haven't read the book by Bryce Zabel and Richard Dolan, AD After Disclosure, I almost see that as the sequel to this movie. So I really hope that someday that could be the sequel to this movie. If they work with Spielberg or not, I hope they can get the rights to Disclosure Day 2 after Disclosure, the day after Disclosure. Literally, there's your title. I'm going to trademark that in just about 10 minutes. But yeah, brilliant observations and analysis by those two. So thank you to Bryce and to Brent for that. Thank you to Suzanne for holding it down in the chat tonight. It was incredible. Thank you guys. I've been, I knew I wouldn't be checking it that much, because once you have a conversation going with film people, we will never, ever shut up. But I did want to give a special shout out to Beanie for the super chat. Great show. Thank you so much. Thank you guys. Thank you to all of you for being here tonight. Regulars, a lot of people watching. We had over 300 of you watching tonight. We need part 2. Yes, I do agree with that. Any last thoughts or comments, guys, on Disclosure Day? You let me know in the chat if you want to throw in the super chat right now. I'll be sure to do that. But I wasn't going to do this, but I feel like I have to, because again, this was a love letter to experiencers, of which both Suzanne and I are. Are you comfortable coming on for a couple minutes? You sure? Okay. I'm going to bring her in because I want her thoughts. Because she told me this got pretty heavy for her towards the end of the movie and whatnot. But let's bring her in. All right, guys, let's bring in Suzanne, because I want to get her thoughts on this as well. There she
Hi.
is.
How is everyone? Boy, this chat, my gosh, you guys. This
Amazing.
was old school chat tonight with going rapid fire. I
Oh my
loved
God,
it.
I couldn't keep up with it. I could not
Yeah.
keep up with it.
Yeah, I
Thank
don't
you,
know how you did this by
Ontological
yourself originally.
I don't either. Your guess is I didn't. That's the problem. What did you think? What did you think of our kind of review of it? And then give us your thoughts on the movie. That's a big, broad,
Sure.
sweeping question, but
Sure.
wherever you want to start.
Okay, well, here's what I think. I think it's probably a double watch for most people. One of the things that I'm decent at is going into a theater or starting a movie just as a watcher, not as a podcast person or UFO researcher. And so literally as I was walking into the theater yesterday, it's like, set it aside. You're going as an experiencer. Read what the message was from an experiencer perspective. And you guys, I was a big crybaby. I mean, I could not at times get the tears stopped. And I felt like by the end of it, I kind of want to tear up now. It's so stupid. But
that's what movies do. That's what they're supposed to do.
I guess so. I felt like as an experiencer, that an experiencer's story got told with truthfulness. That's how it felt to me. Now, I can tell you here in New Mexico, where this topic is wide open, you're not going to run into a lot of skepticism here. Too much has happened here. Socorro, Farmington, Los Alamos, Roswell. It's just not a normal place. People were clapping and crying. And at the end of the theater, they would not leave the theater until the final credit rolled. And so I felt like it really touched that audience as well, even though I know the vast majority of them are not experiencers in all likelihood. So do I need to watch it again from a movie critic perspective? I do. I need to put a different hat on in order to really analyze the good points that you guys made today. But I also had several interactions, online with other experiencers, and the reaction was the same. The reaction was heartfelt.
See, and at the end of the day, that's all that truly matters. Like, again, the beauty of film, of theater, of art in general. You have art hanging on the wall behind you. I have art behind me. I know you wouldn't really consider this art, but it's art.
Yes, I do. Yes, I do.
Like, it's interpretation, and it's meant to evoke feeling. That art is feeling an emotion spilled onto a canvas, onto a movie screen, onto a stage, into a song. Like, that's what art is. And, Steven Spielberg is an artist. He always has been, always will be. And I think, again, you can look at this movie from a movie standpoint. You can look at it as a UFO movie standpoint. And that's the beauty of it. I look forward to going back and watching it more as just a movie itself. I think I went in, being like, I want you to make every inside baseball Easter egg joke. Like, there was one point where a character's name was Nathan Twining, the Twining memo from Roswell and all that stuff. I love that. Again, the screen memories, the Kecksburg UFO crash and stuff. I have a question for you. There was one part in the movie where I could tell everyone in my audience that is where they got emotional. I even saw people around me like covering their eyes, and that is how the aliens were handled in terms of like during the Roswell thing and the alien autopsy or whatever they were doing to it. Like, it gave this idea that we have done nothing but torture these alive aliens. And I kind of took a problem with that. Like, first of all, we're dealing with one race of aliens, apparently, with Spielberg, the alien grace. That's it. There's nothing else, apparently, in terms of his world he's created with Disclosure Day. But then, like, all the scenes were of us doing really horrible things to these aliens. Do you agree with that, or how do you think they handled that?
I do. And I think, Ryan, that was part of the message around the words empathy that were used so often. So they're showing you a platform, they're platforming where empathy is not being applied, and then ending the movie with an empathy message, which I also think is really important. I think it plays on two audiences too, not just for those of us who have had somewhat positive experiences. It's not as scary. Well, it might be scary in the moment just because it's so odd to us, but they're not being hateful. But I also thought that the word empathy, and perhaps to some extent the word listen, they also played into what I think that the religious population needs to hear. Keep your heart in the right place. Don't go to the fear mongering. And so I very much appreciated it from that perspective. And of course, you and I were talking earlier, the whole platform that he set up for the religious communities, I found very touching and powerful. There is a way to, keep your religion and your beliefs intact and allow for beings other than ourselves.
Beautifully put. I like that. Yeah. I want to give credit. I don't have her name. I apologize. But the other newscaster that they started showing at the end there when all the videos started playing in succession and she is reacting to them in real time. And she's like speechless
she doesn't
at points.
know.
And she's trying to find the words. And she did such a good job of portraying what would it be like to be like Emily Blunt's character is a whole different universe. Like
Right.
she is literally disclosing what the
Right.
aliens want to impart. This is a news anchor reacting in real time to what is being shown. And I thought she did such a wonderful job of how this could play out if it were broadcast and nobody knew what was coming up next. You would be like, oh my God, wait, is this real?
Exactly. Yeah.
Wait, I'm getting word that this is declassified and it is authenticated real by the government.
Exactly.
This isn't AI, it's not special effects, it's not a prank. Oh my God, okay. So they just that poor alien, or oh my God, that like it the immediacy of the disclosure at the end was
Yeah.
very well done. Very
I
well
thought so
paced.
too.
Yeah.
And it brought back for me, and probably for you, those moments of my first experience where the brain is grappling with the data rolling in front of
Yeah.
us. And you don't, for those few moments, know what to do with it. It took some of us a little longer, like 40 years, to try to figure out what to do with that. But I thought it was such a powerful display of what many of us have felt on the front end, except on a larger scale, because this is like confirmation. This is not a deniable. She did not get the opportunity to play the mind games and give the mind salve that we give ourselves in tough situations. She had a process in real time.
Right. It wasn't a narrative of a mass media, corporate media thing. It
And it
wasn't.
wasn't one person like you or me in a
Yeah.
particular area having a single person experience. This
Yeah.
was a huge experience across an entire planet, and she just
Mhm.
happened to be on film for it.
Right. Can you imagine? Oh, this is the day I get called in to fill in or
I
something.
have to do this.
But you know, for her, for that one anchor that we saw, there were thousands all over America and across the world
Right.
in her shoes as well as this story trickles out to the entire world. So that was interesting. I
thought so
liked,
too.
and you know, again, I think I was like, well, how is the public reacting? I want to see what's going on, but that's not the point of the movie. It's
That's right.
the lead up to Disclosure Day.
Right.
Spielberg said this is a chase movie. It's a race for information and getting that information out. What happens next? That's for you guys to imagine.
right.
I'm done imagining. I've imagined Disclosure Day. You
Exactly.
imagine what comes next. So
Right.
yeah.
I don't know,
I love
Ryan,
that.
did you all were so busy, you probably didn't see this really interesting discussion in the chat about what looked like bad CGI deer and
Oh,
fox.
yes.
And so it was interesting to watch, yes, they were clearly identifiable as not real. But
Yeah.
in my mind at the time, what I thought was they want to make sure the uninitiated audience knows that that what they're seeing is not real, sort of a nod to the screen memory, because he
Thank you.
had the money and the capability to make them perfect.
Thank
And
you.
I
I'm
just
sorry. I
thought,
didn't mean to.
no, you're
Uh,
fine. The message was subtle, I thought, but for those of us who hear the memory stories, I thought, oh, he's giving a little nod to that.
I agree. I think, I watch a lot of movie YouTube reviewers and stuff and just the reviews in general. We're all saying, why were the animals so poorly CGI? This is Steven Spielberg. It should be the best special effects out there.
Right.
I don't think it was a budgetary thing. I don't think it was like a rushed
Either.
CGI thing. I
Right.
think you're right. I think they went with this sort of uncanny valley, almost uh magical, mystical, dreamlike. There's the word I'm looking for.
Yeah,
Dreamlike interpretation of these animals because they're not.
because they're
Like
not.
you mentioned,
That's
they are
right.
not animals.
That's
The
right.
cardinal was not an animal. The deer was not an animal. That was not a forest and a house that Emily Blunt was going into as a child. It was a craft. It
Yeah.
was an alien.
Yes.
And we should mention when they pan down to where the deer hooves were, they pan down once, it's deer hooves. They pan down again, it's tridactyl footprints of what is presumably an alien. So I
So
loved that moment.
I did too, and I think those subtleties, that's the part of the movie meant for those of us who research and study this,
We get it.
because
Yeah.
you're getting Easter eggs as you go, and I'm not sure they were for the regular audience because
Yeah.
other than, well, those were clearly not real, they're going to leave that there. You and I know what a screen memory is. You and I know what experiencers tell us about those screen memories in their worlds. So I just thought it was very interesting. The footprints, yes, always glamorous. Absolutely. That's another one of those Easter eggs that we know very clearly what it means.
Exactly. Yeah. What else did I want to ask you? Oh, let's go to the end. How do you think they did? Did you like that they showed the alien, wheeled out the alien and showed it? Did you like that Emily Blunt had a last line? Like, what were your thoughts? What
I liked
were
both of
your
those
impressions?
things.
Okay.
Because here's what I think has to happen as part of actual disclosure. This is certainly not Spielberg's job. Maybe it is. I don't know. Maybe, if you want to go conspiracy theory, maybe it was. But I think desensitizing Americans to a more normalized interaction with non-human intelligence and giving it a face and a body and the unusual things, the unusual skin, so different from our own. I think that in this, and to somehow weave that in, I thought was so smart. They are not going to look like us. They are not going to talk like us. And so letting the larger audience have a little glimpse, and then of course, those of us in the field, it makes perfect sense to us. And then for her last line, listen. Oh my gosh, absolutely. I think that was a nod to the experiencers. I also think it was a nod to listen to the garbage coming from the top historically. I could see the play on many levels of the word listen, and I think that we're free based on our experiences to interpret how we want to, what that means. So what did you think? Did you like it, dislike it? What did
I did not like it at first. Like I said, maybe it was my theater. There were some people who laughed right at the end there. There were some people who were like, "Oh, like
you needed to come
really?"
watch it in New Mexico.
But, and there were people crying, like you said. I think, and that's again, that's the sign of, I want to say good writing, but it's a sign of knowing when you've showed your hand and when to stop, when to quit. I think they should have quit a little earlier.
Really?
I would like to have just seen her. I have these as writers, you visualize
sure.
these things, and then it's up to the director and actors to personify it. I wanted her to turn to the camera, deep breath, cut to black. So we don't even get the word listen. But now, after hearing what Brent had to say, I completely have changed my mind. I like the listen because it can mean all these different things,
It can. It's multi-layered, and it's there for each listener to deal with,
Right. In so many different ways. Hypothetical for you.
Okay.
I guess too. Do you think she says anything else after? Personally, do you think she says anything after listen? And what do you think happens after this?
Gosh, you know how much I want a sequel. So I want a sequel so badly that I can't see straight, and it's clouding my judgment. I don't think that it's actually the setup for a sequel, though. When I put my rational brain back on it, I think it was sort of a directive to the audience to pay better attention. Does something come after it? I don't know, because and maybe this is just a lawyer thing, but sometimes more words get in your way of your message, and fewer words have a broader meaning and hit a broader audience. And that's how I took the word listen. So I'm not sure something was supposed to come after.
Yeah, that's fair. I love that. Yeah, again, this is like the beauty of movies. Like we have these conversations both ufologically and religiously, spiritually, like whatever,
Exactly.
existentially. So again, this movie is tracking to be a major success. It's going to make its money back. It's going to make money. It's doing incredible overseas, which I was not expecting for a
Really?
very American centric UFO
yeah.
disclosure movie, but it's doing amazing across the world. It hasn't even opened in some countries. Japan's not getting it till October. I heard from two
Right.
friends over
I
there.
heard I
So
saw Darren Vickers
whew,
post that. It's like, that's a
yeah,
long haul to wait on this movie.
I told him disclosure might actually happen before the movie
Before
comes out over there.
it could happen, we don't know.
Who knows? That's who knows?
Thank you
Oh,
to
thank you.
Ontological Shock. So
I bet
sweet.
you liked the ending better than the ending of Nicolas Cage's Knowing movie. Oh boy, that was a rough movie for anyone who's seen it. Yeah, for sure. But yeah, I think will this go down as like the best Steven Spielberg movie? No, not in my personal opinion. Will it go down in like his top 5? I don't even know about that, Suzanne. From a filmmaking standpoint and
Yeah.
overall cultural impact in movie making, but I think it'll be a very important movie to look back on as disclosure evolves and as more of the world begins to accept these things that we have seen with our own eyes and that we
Yes.
talk about and we think about constantly. And maybe it will take a alien presence to make us all come back together again and that unifying experience that I think the movie was really trying to get at. But
I think so too, and to
yeah,
reprioritize.
reprioritize. Very good wording. I loved it. I'm loving it more as I talk about it, which I think is so important. I had this problem with the horror movie Weapons that came out last year. It
Oh,
was
yeah.
huge, major
Huge.
success, but I think also your experience paints your perception of a movie too. I went at a 10 a.m. matinee to see a horror movie. I had some woman sit next to me and take out a full meal, and she came in late, started eating. She was
Oh my
talking to
gosh.
me during the movie, like, "Oh, did you see that?" I'm like, "Yeah, I saw that. I'm watching the movie." Um,
You and my oldest son, he can
ugh,
hardly stand to go to the theater at a regular theater time because
no,
the people drive him insane.
no, I go at 10 in the morning, and that's when you know the diehards are there. But
Oh,
apparently, she
sure.
was one of them.
And they're not gonna
But
chat with you,
right.
theoretically, but
But I gave that movie, Weapons, a horrible review right after. And then everyone was like, "What? Come on, blah blah blah. Go see it again." And I did. I went back the next day and I
yeah,
saw it. And my rating skyrocketed after that because I actually
yep,
sat with it and watched it for that reason. So I think I'm gonna go do that again. There's a
good.
9:40 a.m. showing of Disclosure Day here tomorrow. I think I'm gonna do it.
Go do it and just
I
set
think it's
everything
important.
you know aside and let it roll over you.
Yeah,
I'll submit you probably won't be able to set your personal experience aside as you do that, work those mechanics, but I think you might feel differently if you're able to leave sort of our podcasting stuff to the side and all the research you do.
absolutely. I'm just gonna go in, and just experience it. I think
Exactly, just let it
that
be.
was yeah. You when your expectations are gone, you can just like enjoy it and
Yeah,
escape. This is a
exactly.
summer movie. It's a blockbuster movie, they call them. It's entertainment. Steven
Yep,
Spielberg has never been the heaviest, most cerebral filmmaker out there, but he does ask big questions.
he
And this
makes a
is
damn fine film. Yeah,
whew, one of the
yeah,
biggest questions you can ever ask. And it's
exactly.
wrapped up in a pretty damn good movie. So
I
I'll
agree.
I'll
I
put it
agree.
that way.
I wanna hear from you when you
Cool.
get out tomorrow.
Absolutely. You know you will. But guys, we want to hear from you. Let us know, not just in the live chat, because we're going to be hopping off in a second, but in the comments below this video, put your reviews of Disclosure Day. Continue the conversation there. Like Emily Blunt said in the movie, let's listen to one
Yeah,
another
let's
and
listen.
have that conversation. So comments
Exactly.
below. This will be going up on the podcast very shortly. So in the Spotify comments, talk all about what you thought about Disclosure Day as well. And yeah, we have an episode dropping in just a couple hours with Patrick Armstrong from Vetted.
I'm
He's
so
coming on the
excited.
show to talk about psionics. Yeah. Summoning in UFOs with your mind. So a lot to do with what we saw in Disclosure Day in some ways. So
Exactly.
a very prevalent conversation and a film you guys should check out. It's called Psionics, The Minds That Summon UFOs. So check out our interview tomorrow with Patrick and be sure to watch the movie at psionics.film. But I think that's all I got. Suzanne, you got anything before we get out of
Not
here?
a thing. Glad to see everybody in the chat today. Chat did really
Yeah.
well. We had to take a couple of people out, but everybody did really well helping with that.
It's bound to happen. Passionate bunch. Awesome. Well, we're going to get out of here. Again, our special thanks to Bryce Zabel and Brent Friedman. Be sure to check out their podcast, Sound, Light, and Frequency, wherever you get podcasts. And Need to Know. Bryce is still doing Need to Know as well with Richard Dolan. So check those out. If you can, guys, right now, go to somewhere on the screen. That's my brand new movie review podcast. It's right here on YouTube. It's on Apple, Spotify. But if you can do me a favor, head on over here on YouTube to somewhere on the screen and subscribe, please. I would greatly appreciate that. We're going to be having fun over there. It's not UFO centric. I'm going to be doing dramas, comedies, romance movies, film noirs, horror movies, you name it, Suzanne. I'm going to be covering it over there. So I'm already working on episode 2, which I'll give a little spoiler. Something near and dear to my heart, musicals.
Me too.
So, yeah.
Count me in.
I'm actually going to be doing a whole analysis of the 2005 film adaptation of Rent, the big musical from the 90s, Rent, the rock musical. That
Wonderful.
I've seen that musical like 30 times. It was my favorite Broadway.
65,300 times.
300.
If you've seen Rent, you'll get the reference.
You were right on. I kudos for that. So yeah, I'm going to do a fun video that compares the Broadway musical, the whole story behind that. It's a very, very interesting, kind of tragic story about Jonathan Larson, the creator of the musical, and also the film adaptation, which a lot of the original Broadway actors were a part of the movie as well. We might even have one of the original Broadway cast members on the show to talk
I'll
about.
cross my fingers.
Yep, I'm working on that right now. But yes, guys, if you can, please head on over to somewhere on the screen on YouTube and be sure to subscribe, like the first video. The first video is my review and analysis of Close Encounters of the Third Kind.
Oh, one of my favorites. One of my favorites. Yeah.
Thank you. I see we already have people going over it and subscribing. Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah.
This is my
I love
way
Hairspray
of,
too, Andrew Berger.
Hairspray. Oh, that'd be a good one to cover.
That'd be a great one. Yeah.
I loved that movie. That was a really good movie. John Travolta playing the mom was a little weird.
Yeah, but I loved it. I'm willing to go along with all that. You know, that didn't bother me a bit.
No, it's yeah. Stretch your imagination for sure.
Yeah, and didn't Divine do the first mother in the original?
I believe so.
Divine.
Yeah,
I think she was the.
I think you're right.
She was the mother. Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, we're gonna be covering all sorts of stuff over there. I'm super excited. But
it's gonna be fun.
Yep. I head to Nova Scotia in 3 days. So for the live streams, I'll keep you guys posted on when we're going to do them. We're going to try to keep it here on Sundays. We've moved back to Sundays from our quick temporary Friday pivot. But we'll see. We'll see what happens for sure as that unfolds and I get my filming schedule. I'm going over there to film my ghost hunting show. So we'll keep you guys posted on social media and all of that stuff. But cool. I think that's it.
Great.
Yeah. Let's get out of here, Suzanne.
Everybody have a great night.
Guys, thank you. Yeah. This was so fun. Again, special thanks to our super chatters and everyone. Like, subscribe, do all that YouTube-y stuff, podcasty stuff. We appreciate that. And we will leave you with our mantra as always. Keep your feet on the ground, but never stop searching somewhere in the skies. And listen.
There's nothing to hide. There's nothing to hide at all.
Spectre Vision Radio.